Well, the most dramatic thing we were able to do, and a lasting benefit, was to have a ban on the possession and use of automatic or semi-automatic weapons for the general public. And the exceptions were extremely limited.
Today, folks, we're going to dive headfirst into a story that's so spine-chilling and surreal, it's almost as if it leapt straight out of a Hollywood thriller. I'm talking about a tale known as the Kimberley Killer. Now, if you're familiar with the movie Wolf Creek, you'll have a bit of a sense of what we're dealing with here. But let me tell you, what we're about to uncover is not fiction. It's chillingly real. So imagine the scene. We're in the rugged, remote landscapes of the top end of Australia, in the Northern Territory, and the Kimberley region of Western Australia. Picture it, vast, relentless wilderness, stretching as far as the eye can see. We're talking about an area that's 3 times the size of England, but so sparsely populated that finding another soul can be like searching for a needle in a haystack. It's the kind of place where being unprepared doesn't just mean discomfort, it can mean not making it out at all. Now let's rewind to early June 1987. We meet 70-year-old Marcus Bullin, a man who once held sway as the Deputy Mayor of Fremantle, and his wife Winifred. They're on the adventure of a lifetime, a road trip across the vast Northern Territory with their 40-year-old son Lance and his wife Joan. They're seasoned outback travellers, soaking in the breathtaking Australian landscape. Everything is going perfectly, but little do they know their journey is about to take a dark turn. You see, what had happened was, on June 8th, they roll into this quaint little town called Timber Creek and decide to camp for the night at the Wayside Inn Caravan Park. They're probably thinking, finally, creature comforts, hot showers, flushable toilets, the works. But their plans of heading southwest back into Western Australia are put on hold. Why? Well, because Timber Creek is a fisherman's paradise, teeming with barramundi. But remember, folks, this is Australia. Where the barramundi swim, the crocodiles also lurk. So on the morning of June 9th, Marcus and Lance head out in their station wagon to find the perfect fishing spot. They promise Winifred and Joan they'll be back in an hour to pick them up. But as the hours tick by, there's no sign of them. Now your mind starts racing, right? What could have happened? Lost? Injured? Car trouble? And let's not forget those crocs. Or perhaps they just found the perfect fishing spot and lost track of time. But here's where it gets really nerve-wracking. Joan and Winifred don't have a clue where Marcus and Lance went. They didn't even know themselves when they left. They're out there, somewhere, in this vast, unpredictable wilderness. By the afternoon, with no sign of the men, panic starts to set in. Joan and Winifred do the only thing they can do and head to the Timber Creek police station, where Constable First Class Martin Plum and Constable Brett Thorpe spring into action, combing through the popular fishing spots. But as darkness creeps over the outback, their search becomes a race for time, a needle in a haystack search in the daunting expanse of the Australian wilderness. As the Northern Territory Police ramped up their investigation efforts, they put out a call to all locals, asking everyone to keep their eyes peeled for anything out of the ordinary. I mean, this was big news across the region, with police bulletins broadcasting urgently. It's a kind of situation that grips the community, Now get this, Helen Anderson, who ran the Wayside Inn Caravan Park, where our travellers had camped, here's one of these bulletins. She remembers something odd. A white Toyota 4Runner with Queensland plates parked at the inn on the very night Marcus and Lance disappeared. Now, it wasn't the stolen vehicle she was supposed to keep on the lookout for, but it was unusual enough that she felt she had to report it. And apart from this, there were no other leads. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack, but every little piece counts. As the first light of dawn breaks, the search teams are out there again, and the atmosphere is just charged with urgency. And then they find something. The Bullins burnt out Sigma station wagon, just 9 kilometres away. It's a heart-dropping moment. The vehicle is discovered near the Victoria River, half buried in a riverbed of sand. It's a grim, daunting sight. But it gets worse. Near the river's edge, they find 2 shallow graves, and in them the body of Marcus and Lance Bullin. I mean, can you imagine? The search area is immediately sealed off, and it's clear this is now a major crime scene. Darwin police are called in for backup, and a team of 7 investigators and forensic pathologists leave Darwin at around 1:15 p.m. They have to fly in, covering about 600 kilometres to get to the scene. They arrive at 3:30 p.m. that same day, and for the next 2 days, they're conducting a meticulous search through the area, leaving no stone unturned. As the investigation deepens, the grim details start to emerge. The bodies of Marcus and Lance, and nearby, where the vehicle tracks are discovered, shoe impressions, drag marks that clearly don't belong to them. A crucial piece of evidence is found, a spent .223 cartridge case, right near the drag marks on the riverbank. It's like the killer dropped it accidentally as he's dragging the bodies. And then there are these chilling bloodstains on each side of the tyre tracks made by the Bullins' car. The drag marks originated from 2 large blood pool stains on the ground where the car had been parked before the killer moved in to burn it. Blood group testing confirms the worst. These were the bloodstains of Marcus and Lance Bullin. The forensic analysis and the autopsies paint a harrowing picture. Marcus and Lance were shot while laying face down next to their car. The bullets passed right through them and embedded into the ground below. It seems like the killer had been in the area where Marcus and Lance arrived, or shortly thereafter. He sat and watched them for a time, and when they exited their car, he confronted them with the .223 caliber rifle, forced them to lie down, and then he coldly shot them in the back. After the murder of Marcus and Lance Bullin, our killer starts to cover his tracks with almost chilling precision. He strips the men of their clothes, searches them thoroughly for any evidence that might help identify them, and removes the number plates from their car. All of these items he stuffs into the back of the car. He then drags the bodies into these shallow graves near the river, where they're eventually found, and sets their car on fire a short distance away. Now, as the forensic teams continue their painstaking examination, the Northern Territory Police are not sitting idle. They set up roadblocks across the top end, covering an area the size of France, Spain and Italy combined. Imagine that. These roadblocks stretch all the way south to Alice Springs. They're doing everything in their power to restrict the suspect's movements and catch this guy. But considering the enormity of the area, it's unlikely that they'll find him.
Tourist information centres have been flooded with inquiries. Their advice is travel only during the day, travel in convoy if you can. As far south as the Pilbara region, visitors coming here have been told to reconsider their holiday plans very carefully.
Meanwhile, just 226 kilometres from Timber Creek, where these horrific murders occurred, is Kununurra. This town is right at the far eastern edge of the Kimberley, just a stone's throw from the Northern Territory's border. And here's where another twist comes in. On June 13th, a young couple, 26-year-old Julie Warren and her fiancé Philip Wymaker, also 26, along with their friend Terry Bolt, aged 36, set off from Kununurra. They're headed to the Pentecost River, about 110 kilometres away, for a weekend of camping and fishing. They're in the middle of planning for their wedding, so the trip is supposed to be a relaxing escape. They pick the Pentecost River crossing picnic area, a well-known spot about 350 kilometres from where the Timber Creek murders happened. Joining them are 2 more friends, David McKenzie and Daniel Rowe, who arrive separately. They spend the day and night fishing, calling it quits around midnight. The next morning, after breakfast, Daniel and David head home early while Philip, Terry and Julie decide to stay back for more fishing. Now, the Pentecost River crossing is a popular spot, so there are a few other campers around. Among them, David Murphy and Branko Majkovic, who leave the campsite around 11:15 a.m. that morning. They notice Philip, Terry and Julie are the only other group still there. Philip and Terry are relaxing by their car while Julie is packing their gear. The dinghy is still moored on the riverbank. As Desmond and Branko drive out, they spot a white Toyota four-wheel drive with a canopy parked in a dry creek bed nearby. The vehicle is somewhat hidden, but Desmond captures a glimpse of the number plate. It's a Queensland number plate, but he can't make out the details, and there's no one visible in the car. Fast forward to just before 4 p.m. that afternoon. We have Frederick Pierce Young, a truck driver, navigating his road train from Mount Barnett to Wyndham along the Gibb River Road. Now, this is just one of only 2 main roads running through the entire Kimberley area. Frederick Pearce Young is cruising near the Pentecost River crossing picnic area when he spots something alarming. Thick black smoke pluming up into the sky. It's the kind of smoke that screams trouble, possibly a fuel fire, which is not something you'd see every day in these parts. As he drives past the turnoff of the picnic area, Young notices something odd. There are no other cars behind him, but suddenly a white Toyota 4Runner with a large canopy comes out of nowhere. There's something about this vehicle that just doesn't sit right with him. Young lets the 4Runner pass, and as it does, he captures a glimpse of the Queensland number plates. And the driver? Well, a man with a relatively small build. And it strikes Young as how odd the vehicle seems to be overloaded with camping gear for just one person. The next day, back at Kununurra, things take a worrying turn. David McKenzie, a friend of Philip and Terry, realises they haven't shown up for work, and neither has Julie. This is highly unusual for them. Alarmed, Mackenzie starts making calls, but there's no sign of them. He and a colleague head to Pentecost River crossing picnic area, and what they find there is nothing short of chilling. Philip's burnt-out Toyota trip carrier tucked away in the bush near their campsite. Their dinghy they had on this opposite riverbank, well, its engine is now gone, but there's no sign of Philip, Julie or Terry. So Mackenzie's call to the Wynnum police sets a whole new chain of events. The police arrive to find a haunting scene. The burnt-out car, blood spots, boot prints, tyre impressions, and 5 spent cartridges from a .22 caliber gun. But then, the discovery that comes next is heartbreaking. At around 4:15 p.m, they find Julie Warren's body, naked, laying face down in the river's edge about 500 metres from the campsite, with a bullet wound in her shoulder. It's a grim sight, and it sends shockwaves through the community.
There's been plenty of rain here, so the waterholes are full, and police admit with a few provisions, the gunman could hole up in these hills for weeks.
Word of the murders of Marcus and Lance Bullin had already spread, and now with these eerily similar circumstances, the police start piecing together a frightening possibility that these murders might be connected, possibly the work of the same perpetrator. Reinforcements are called in from all over, including Perth, over 3,000 kilometres away. Roadblocks are set up across the Kimberley and Pilbara regions and along the Victoria River. They're casting a wide net, desperate to catch whoever is responsible for these heinous crimes. Then on the morning of June 16th, another horrifying discovery. Philip Winemaker's body floating in the river near the campsite, shot just like Julie. And at 9:30 am, Terry Bolt's body is found on the south bank of the river, also a victim of gunshot wounds. A sense of fear and urgency grips the region as everyone realises a killer is on the loose. A killer who is dangerously skilled at evading capture. As the investigation intensifies, the question on everyone's mind is, who could do something like this? And more importantly, can they be stopped before they strike again? Forensic evidence at the Pentecost River crossing paints a chilling picture. The killer, or killers, had been watching Philip, Julie and Terry from some high ground hidden in tall grass. They approach and open fire about 100 metres away, moving in this calculated arc around the campsite. The evidence is in there, in the flattened grass, the shoe impressions, the spent cartridges. It's like a storyboard of a cold, calculated ambush. After the murders, the bodies are stripped and rolled into the Pentecost River. The killer then takes all the clothing and camping gear, loads it into Philip's car and drives to a nearby gully and sets it on fire. It's methodical, it's brutal, and it's utterly heartless. Now the police are hunting a predator, someone stalking travellers in the top end, seemingly for sport. This sends a wave of fear across the Kimberley region. Locals and tourists are terrified, and the once bustling roads and caravan parks are now eerily silent. The Kimberley transforms into a ghost town. Police roadblocks are everywhere, with officers stopping motorists and warning them against travelling into the area. It's like the whole region is holding its breath, waiting for the killer to be caught. Now the media jumps on the story, labelling the perpetrator the Kimberley Killer, and it's not long before the murders make national headlines. The advice to tourists is clear: reconsider your plans. Those already camping or living remotely are flocking to the safety of caravan parks and communities. Even residents of vast cattle stations, which span millions of hectares, are abandoning their homes for the safety of nearby towns. Now for the police, the task is overwhelming. They're combing through hundreds and thousands of kilometres of wilderness, trying to find a killer with no clear idea of who they're looking for or where they might have gone. It's daunting, almost an impossible task. So on June 16th, things ramp up. 7 officers from Western Australian Tactical Response Group, experts in high-risk situations, are flown from Perth to Kununurra. Detectives from the Major Crime Squad join them, and for the next 5 days, they scour every possible location. Police aircrafts are deployed, searching for any signs of movement, any dust trails made by cars on gravel or dirt roads. Every vehicle they come across is stopped and questioned. The police also use media to their advantage, broadcasting warnings and soliciting tips on any suspicious activity. Calls start coming in about a suspicious white Toyota 4Runner with Queensland number plates, and that's when our truck driver, Frederick Pearce Young, contacts the police, telling them about the smoke he'd seen near the Pentacross River crossing. The community's on high alert, the police are working around the clock, and the killer is still out there. This story takes another gripping turn as the police focus their investigation on Joseph Schwab, a German tourist who had rented a white Toyota 4Runner from Brisbane Airport and hadn't returned it. It's a lead that suddenly turns hot, with police piecing together the puzzle. They circulate Schwab's description and details of the rental car nationwide, and soon enough, forensic evidence connects the dots. The boot prints found at the Timber Creek scene, where the Bullins had been murdered, matched those at the Pentacross River crossing scene. It's a game changer, irrefutably linking these heinous acts to the same individual. Imagine the tension across the Kimberley Northern Territory, heightened by roadblocks, even as far as the Stewart Highway in South Australia. The killer had to pass through Kununurra to get from Timber Creek to the Pentacross River. Fitzroy Crossing, the next major town, was gearing up for its annual rodeo, drawing thousands to the region. The event could provide the perfect cover for the killer to either find new targets or slip away unnoticed. The hunt for the white Toyota 4Runner ramps up, becoming a top priority. The news of the vehicle is broadcast widely, and soon everyone in the region is on high alert. Then, on the morning of June 19th, helicopter pilot Lloyd Neger spots a camouflaged vehicle while mustering horses from the air. It's hidden in a secluded paddock in the Jubilee Downs area. Neger notices something's not right. He flies straight to the Fitzroy River Crossing police station, landing his helicopter right in front of it. It's like something out of a Hollywood movie. The Tactical Response Group, or TRG, is quickly brought in. Neger takes 2 TRG members up in his helicopter to try and locate the camouflage vehicle again, but even from the air, they struggle to identify it. Meanwhile, back in Fitzroy Crossing, a plan is quickly formed. They close off the airspace around the town to civilian traffic, and the TRG officers head towards the vehicle's location, heavily armed and ready for anything. The TRG officers on the ground, guided by the pilots overhead, are virtually blind by this dense bushland. They're approaching the camouflaged car, unable to see what's in front of them, when suddenly, rifle fire breaks the silence. It's a tense chaotic scene, straight out of a nightmare. Bob Brown, one of the TRG officers involved, later recounted this harrowing experience on the Australian True Crime podcast. Hearing his first-hand account is surreal. He described the immediate debrief after the first shots rang out and how they prepared for what might be a deadly confrontation. The adrenaline with fear, the uncertainty, it's all there in his voice. The situation in this bushland was nothing short of a high-stakes action movie, but with the real danger and real lives at stake. The TRG team, moving cautiously through the bush, finally got to within sight of the gunman and his vehicle. Picture this, they're taking cover behind anthills and trees, with the gunman just 40 metres ahead, shirtless, in camouflage trousers, standing defiantly in front of his car. Then things take an unexpected turn. The pilot, who had been guiding the TRG team from the air, suddenly has to pull away to check the aircraft's airworthiness. The gunfire had become so intense, it seemed the aircraft may have been hit. For a moment, the TRG team is left to face the gunman alone. The standoff escalates quickly. The commanding officer's voice yells out to the gunman, urging him to surrender, identifying themselves as police. But the response? A volley of gunfire. The gunman is skilled, possibly well trained, firing with precision. One of the TRG officers barely escapes a bullet, which grazes his arm. Bob Brown, closest to the gunman, makes a decisive move. He shoots, hitting the stock of the gunman's rifle, severing his thumb. The gunman retreats back to his car and re-emerges, this time with a Ruger Mini 14, a firearm that can be handled easily with one hand. Bullets were flying everywhere, Brown recalled in his interview. You didn't know whether to duck left or right or just lay flat. The uncertainty was the worst part. The gunman uses military tactics, shooting and retreating, shooting again, aiming to escape. The TRG officers keep up their momentum, firing and advancing, unsure if hostages are in the car and needing to preserve it for evidence. In a bold move, Brown, undercover from his colleagues, dashes towards the vehicle, slides in the driver's seat and drives it out of the fire, preserving crucial evidence. But as Brown escapes with the car, a new danger emerges. The intense heat that ignites ammunition scattered around the gunman's vehicle, causing explosions. So the TRG officers are forced to dive for cover. Then, a crucial update comes from the helicopter. The pilot reports seeing the offender lying face down in the dirt, about 20 metres from the TRG team. So at 1:15 p.m, the officers cautiously advance and find the gunman on the ground. His rifle struck upright in the dirt beside him, as if he'd fallen while still holding it. The gunman had sustained a fatal gunshot wound through his back, exiting through his heart, likely killing him instantly. This moment marked the end of a harrowing chase, a standoff that seemed more like a scene from a war movie than a police operation. The relief, the exhaustion, the realisation of the danger that they'd just faced. It must have been overwhelming for the TRG team. This was not just a victory in capturing a criminal, it was a testament to their courage, their training, and their commitment to protecting the community from this ruthless predator. The scene following the standoff with the gunman was chaotic yet methodical, as the TRG officers quickly secured the area, extinguished the fire, and waited for investigators and crime scene experts to arrive. The ground was littered with .223 caliber shell casings, the same type as had been used in all 5 murders. This evidence linked the scene directly to the Ruger Mini 14 self-loading rifle used by the gunman. And the vehicle at the centre of it all, the heavily camouflaged Toyota 4Runner with Queensland plates, turned out to be the very car rented from Avis at Brisbane Airport by Joseph Schwab. Inside, the police found damning evidence that connected Schwab to both the Timber Creek and Pentecost River murders. The discovery of Timberland brand boots with distinctive ripple sole patterns matching the boot prints found at both murder scenes. Along with these, they found a firearms license, driver's license, credit cards, savings and checkings books, and camping equipment, all belonging to the 5 victims. A passport in the name of Joseph Schwab was also found, alongside fishing tackle, a toolbox, and 10 sets of water buffalo horns, a peculiar and telling detail. The tyre impressions from the Toyota 4Runner further cemented Schwab's involvement, matching those left near the scenes of both sets of murders. And on June 21st, Joseph Schwab's body was taken to Derby Regional Hospital for a post-mortem examination, where he was formally identified. Born in 1960 in the Bavarian district of Stamberg, Schwab's early life was somewhat enigmatic, but one detail stood out starkly: his intense obsession with guns, starting from his teenage years. He joined a local German firearms club at age just 15 and carried a pistol by the age of 16. Schwab was known to be a quiet loner, and in 1980 he became entangled with a criminal element in West Germany, leading to arrests for various offences. So seeking a fresh start, he moved to Australia in 1981, where he continued his interest in firearms, joining the Southern Cross Pistol Club and going on hunting expeditions. However, by 1984, after losing his job in Australia, Schwab returned to Germany, securing a position as a security guard in 1985. Now, this job required formal pistol training, sharpening the skills that would later be evident in the shootout with police TRG officers. Schwab's solitary nature and fascination with firearms culminated in the cold-blooded murders in the Australian Outback. His story is haunting. It's a reminder of how a dangerous obsession can turn catastrophic. In Germany, Schwab's earlier offences, being less serious, were wiped from his record after 5 years without a further crime, allowing him to work as a security guard with a pistol. He held this position until April 1987, just before returning to Australia. The planning and execution of Joseph Schwab's crimes were alarmingly meticulous. In March 1987, he bought $5,400 worth of Australian travellers' cheques, which was a significant amount of money at the time. Then, less than a month later, he boarded a flight from Frankfurt to Brisbane, landing on April 18th. But Schwab's deceitful actions began soon after his arrival. On April 21st, he falsely claimed to have lost his travellers' cheques at an ANZ bank, cunningly obtaining $1,000 that was essentially a fraudulent transaction. The very next day, Schwab rented a white Toyota 4Runner from Avis at Brisbane Airport, the same vehicle later identified at the crime scenes. And on April 23rd, he cashed the last of his lost travellers' cheques into 2 separate bank accounts. He then went on a shopping spree for firearms, visiting the Five-Way Firearms store in Wollongabba, where he placed an order for an array of firearms, including a Ruger Mini 14.223 caliber rifle, the same type used in the murders. He also purchased a staggering 3,000 rounds of ammunition. This spree was facilitated by the lenient gun laws in Queensland at the time. There was no background checks, no limits on ammunition purchases, which was a frighteningly lax situation that allowed a man like Schwab, with a dangerous past and a deadly obsession, to easily arm himself. Now, the repercussions of Schwab's actions were far-reaching. The coroner in the aftermath of the case advocated for stricter gun laws and a revision of firearm legislation in Australia. However, it wasn't until the Port Arthur massacre in 1996 that significant reforms in Australian gun laws were implemented. Police were able to track down Schwab's movements following his firearms purchase. He travelled extensively, covering over 3,500 kilometres, and was seen at various locations, including a remote petrol station and receiving a parking ticket in Mount Isa. He also stopped in Winnelly for car repairs and even sent a postcard to his parents, giving no hint to his murderous intentions. Schwab's path led him to Timber Creek and the Victoria River, where he committed his first murders, and then to the Pentecost River in the Kimberley, where he claimed 3 more lives. Each location bore the marks of his sinister ritual, from camouflaging himself to the meticulous disposal of his victims' bodies and belongings. The coronial inquest held by Coroner David McCann ruled Schwab's death as justifiable, as he had been actively shooting at the police who were acting in self-defence. But the motives behind his chilling crimes remain a mystery. Schwab had no known medical or mental health issues, and his actions baffled even his family. The coroner and investigators speculate on a variety of motives, including robbery, as many of the victims' belongings were found in his car, and possibly even anger as the way he stripped his victims and burned their belongings. Yet the true reasons behind his actions remain shrouded in mystery, leaving a haunting detail of legacy and of answers and questions that remain buried in grief. So I hope you enjoyed this story, and if you do, please go ahead and like this video, and I'll see you next time.
We are a safer country. Been a number of academic surveys and which have demonstrated a number of mass shooting events has fallen. We are much safer, and that's recognised all around the world. So there's no doubt about that.